Do it.
I first came out to Japan in 2004. Met my wife here. Came back to the States about 2008, 2010. We didn't really like it. Or she didn't really like it, and I like Japan better. So we came back. I actually have not been outside of the country since 2010.
Whoa. Okay.
So when
You must really love it there.
yeah, when I if I do visit the States, it'll be like a pretty wild experience. So
I know, right? So yeah, no, right? It'll be like so much has changed.
yeah, but in general, like I like just the way we live life in Japan, like
Yeah.
Like with the past couple of years, one of the things is everyone kept their distance in the first place. So we never really had a full lockdown because everyone is kind of just chill, like the downside is everyone's still wearing masks inside, but whatever.
But yeah, I feel you, man. Yeah, I pretty much moved out of the States 10 months ago, and I'm not really looking forward to going back to live there. I just basically go back to visit my family. Then I come back down here.
Yeah, I made my family visit me several times. So I'm an only child, so it's just my parents that have to come, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. I like pace out here, and also like I've been stuck in my little mountain valley, but it's like a resort area anyway. So what's the problem?
Nice.
Well,
yet to go to Japan.
Yeah, definitely worth the trip. But I would, I would definitely say try and, of course, do Tokyo and Kyoto, but try and get a little bit off that path as well, because that's where things get, more interesting, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I like cities, but I'm more into ancient sites and like, kind of going into adventures.
Yeah, one of my big jams. We have all the hot springs around, so a lot of days off, I'll just hike up the hill, and I'm within 5 minutes of my house. I'm in like this bowl of rice fields with like mountains all around me. So I'm like, that's great. Yeah. So
I love it.
Oh, okay. I actually forgot to send Luke the link, so let me do that. Just to let you know how we roll. Basically, we'll do a little intro. I'll probably, we're not doing an interview, but I'll probably ask you a bit for your story because it's interesting, and it has been 2 months since I heard it last time. So we'll probably do a little bit of an extended intro, talk about the movie a bit. I'll do a quick summary, and then we just kind of let it roll where it wants to, and I'll, as the host, will occasionally probably just make my own statement where I know to like edit later. So editing just meaning that I'm adding music between the bits. So
oh, nice. Yeah, I rewatched the movie today, so it's all fresh in my head, man.
Yeah, I stressed out because last night we're doing Star Wars, the original Star Wars next week. So I was like, which summary do you want, Arrival or Star Wars? He's like, I'll take Star Wars. Like, oh crap. So
it's such a good theme for a podcast.
Yeah. No, I was telling Luke I did like the idea that one, we went ahead and did Stargate because I was like, I don't want to watch Stargate again. So I mean, it's not like terrible. I'm just like, I don't feel like watching this again. So we did that, and then you were like, let's do Positive Aliens. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, have you ever done TV shows?
I do the Twilight Zone, actually.
Dude, you should do the Stargate show, because each of those episodes, bro, are just, I mean, like, I already have 10 episodes off the top of my head that are just like deep disclosure.
The weird thing for me is, and yeah, I can see that because I've seen the Atlantis show, I've seen the Universe show, but I've never seen the SG-1 show. So
SG-1 was the best.
that's
Atlantis
what
was
I hear.
Great. But then, Atlantis, they have the Wraith, which are the reptilians.
Oh yeah, those give me nightmares.
I know, straight up, but that's straight up like the story of the reptilian beings and all that stuff. So
yeah. Yeah, those are the reptilians I like to deal with. But yeah, I got straight up nightmares from the Wraith. So
dude, it's crazy. Another good one is, have you seen Star Trek Discovery?
Oh yeah, I'm a pretty awesome. Well-heeled Trekkie. So
yeah, I like that one because it's like using like a lot of known science and quantum physics, like things that we are finding out now. Especially the whole Mycelium network.
Right. Actually, we got to do the movie Interstellar with the science advisor for all the Trek shows. So
Oh,
that
no
was
way,
kind of
dude.
cool.
That's crazy.
And
Yeah.
it was right when she started, and she was like, "Yeah, look for my handiwork with like, giant, like massive anomalies." And since then, Star Trek's been all giant, massive anomalies. So we're like, okay, she wasn't lying to
Yeah.
us. But yeah, and now we got Strange New Worlds, which is I like. It's
Oh,
it's
Star Trek?
yeah, it's modern television, but it's basically reusing the original series format with like modern television skills. So
Is
it's
it out already?
it's episode, they're almost finished. I think episode 8 comes out tomorrow.
What platform is it on? I want to see it.
I think it's Paramount Plus. I live in Japan, and there's like a bit of a ahoy matey for watching that. Although I'm going to buy the Blu-ray and probably send my dad a copy of that one too, so I don't feel too
Dude, I
bad
found
about.
it on Amazon Prime.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the season 2 of Discovery had Pike, right? Pike and Spock. So
Uh-huh.
this is the show where we get to just go hang with Pike and Spock on the Enterprise now.
Oh, that's so epic.
Before Kirk's there. So
Oh yeah. I did see the trailer of this. Cool. I gotta change my VPN so I can watch it.
yeah, I actually don't have any streaming services, so I'll still buy physical media. I don't know. I just like to have stuff, I guess.
Yeah, you like to collect it, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I used to have it like organized, in the very like OCD, and that's fallen to the wayside. But recently I've just gotten into the habit of collecting guitars, which is probably a terrible idea, but a whole lot
You
of
play
fun.
guitar?
Yeah. I've been finding in the stores around here like some of the Mexican Fenders, and they're like they're used, but they're new. It's amazing. Okay, here comes Luke.
How long's the podcast for?
If you have a time, tell us. Typically it runs somewhere north or south of an hour.
Cool. Yeah. Run, that's good.
There we go. Yellow.
Hey,
There you
brother.
go.
Morning.
Groovy. Okay.
Hey, you Luke.
I gave a bit of the rundown on what we're doing, so I guess we're just gonna roll into it because I'm gonna ask Neil to give a bit of an intro because it's been a little while since I heard his cast. So
you don't need me to do the usual intro?
oh no, we'll do that. I'm just gonna before diving straight into the movie, I'm gonna get him to give a spiel because I need to hear it again.
Okay.
Okay. Year is 2016, I believe.
Yep. I was just checking it then.
Start date.
In the year 2016, they arrived.
They arrive every year or two. They arrive like 5 times a year in the movies, right?
Yep.
But sometimes they
you
pelt
saying
you.
the movie was 2016? Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
All right. Cool. Yeah.
And getting pelted with lasers in most of the movie. So today's movie, Arrival, well, I guess the Chinese military shoots some lasers. There's a bomb, but yeah, we kind of jumped into this as a positive alien sort of movie.
Yeah.
As opposed to getting your face melted off, which can be cinematically fun. But yeah. Anyway, this is Matt.
This is Luke.
It's a sci-fi sanctuary. Of course, it's Arrival. Our guest here today, Arrival has a fair amount about synchronicities, and I brought in our guest today through a bit of synchronicities. Hearing him on a podcast talking about being on that podcast because of synchronicities, I'm like, how far can we push that ball down the line? So from the Portals to Ascension website is Neil Gower. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, brother. Nice to see you, Matthew. Nice to meet you, Luke.
Hello.
And Neil, I want you to just sort of, I remember you having a very interesting story. I think starting in the UK yourself, is it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit about your trip?
What's that?
Oh yeah, just tell us a bit about your trip, man.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I was born in London, but I moved to California when I was 12 years old. And I was raised, my parents are from India, so I was raised with a Hindu background, but I pretty much didn't believe in anything. I just followed, what I was told, followed the rites and rituals. One thing that I really appreciate being raised Hindu was I was not ever told that my religion was the only way. So because I wasn't told this is the only way, I was really open to all types of different beliefs, including like the existence of Jesus, Moses, all types of ancient scriptures. When I turned 18 and I graduated high school in 2000, I started becoming curious about what the root of all of this was. I was seeing in all these religions that there's so many commonalities and similar stories, and some stories the exact same story. Like when we talk about Jesus, for example, the same story as Krishna, same stories as Hermes, and so much beyond that. And I was wondering why we all focus so much on our differences, right? All these religions are saying how different we are from another, rather than all the hidden in plain sight, really, or not even hidden, all the information that shows that there's some sort of common tradition, culture that we came from. So that started my search at age 18, 2000, 2001, trying to figure out if there was a root to all religion. That Portal to Ascension basically began with that thought: is there a root to all religion? As I was going down that route and looking for that, I also was like a really linearly minded person that was into science, and I was finding out about quantum physics. Pretty soon, I realized that some of these ancient cultures had metaphors in their texts that was relating to some sort of quantum energy, realization of the subatomic particles. Whether it's the Buddha talking about kalapas, which literally translates to subatomic particles, or if it's the Sumerian text with images of DNA and images of like wormholes and a DNA coming out of it with a human, maybe representing some sort of hybridization. So I started connecting ancient civilizations to a very ancient awareness of quantum physics and the subatomic world. And that just started my whole journey really down the rabbit hole. For around 8 years, from 2001 to 2008, I was deep into it. I even went so deep that I went a little too deep. I went into the conspiracies hardcore, and I was like in a place of fear where I started following bloodlines and tracking like ancient secret societies up until modern time. And I really got to a point where I thought we were completely screwed, and that, you know, this reality is being controlled, and it's been like this for thousands of years, until 2008, where I had an epiphany, an awakening experience, when I realized that everything that I was doing was, you know, so spiritually based, whether it's talking about the ancient civilizations and the spiritual awareness they had, the level of consciousness they had, or whether it's talking about the fact that we're all vibration and frequency, and each dimension is a bandwidth of vibratory frequency. And when you shift your vibration into a higher octave, you also shift into another dimension. All of this was the awareness I was into, but I wasn't really feeling fulfilled. So in 2008, I started realizing that the darkness and all this craziness I see in the world is actually working for the light, and that we signed up to get this experience, this duality, so that we can come here and really learn what it is that we don't want, get the contrast so that we can create what we want. And 2008, when I had that kind of understanding, you know, that's like a really small summary of like the actual awareness I got in that moment. I created Portal to Ascension, and since then we've done over 4,000 events. I work with thousands of speakers. At this point, I have an online university where we do around 110 events a year: summits, conferences, retreats, tours. About 80% of them are online, 20% of them are live. Like, for example, next year we're going to Egypt. We're taking 20 people to Egypt. This year we have a retreat in Tulum. And the information that we go through is everything and anything that can help uplift humanity. So whether it's self-empowerment, sound healing, the science of sound, ancient civilizations, what really happened in Egypt and how old Egypt really is. And then the topic of today, which is the extraterrestrial question, looking into not only the ancient connection to extraterrestrial civilizations, but also working with whistleblowers and giving people updates on what's really happening right now in the mainstream in regards to the disclosure of UFOs.
And yeah, like I was saying, Arrival I like because it is kind of a positive movie. It's, you know, it's science minded and spiritually minded at the same time. So I'll come out, and Luke knows exactly what I'm talking. I've told this to Luke 87 times, where I've had just a bit of friction with this movie, just because I love psychedelic color, which Close Encounters has, and this doesn't. This one's very black and white. So, but when I watched it the first time in 2016, I kind of understood that this is good. Something's just not grabbing me. One, I think, is it needs 2 viewings for sure. And I hate to say this, but even after watching it last night, I'm like, I think this movie might be smarter than me. Like, I mean, sometimes we have to admit, like, when the movie is smarter than you, and this may be the case. So,
Yeah.
so I was expecting to like it better watching again last night, and I did, but still, it's just like, man, I got to wrap my brain around this. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's next level. There's so many things overlapping in there. You know, there's a lot of things that I caught watching it again today that I never saw in the first place.
Luke, is this your first viewing? I think this was a waiting for the podcast to get to it sort of movie.
Yeah, I remember it coming out, and for whatever reason, I didn't see it at the time. And then once we started this podcast, it was like, well, I guess I'll watch it when we do it for the podcast. So yeah, I watched it for the first time last night.
First impressions, then?
Yeah, I liked it. Cool aliens, cool designs, great music.
Yep.
I liked its depiction of time.
Should I have told you to watch it twice?
No, I got it.
Okay.
I'm just smarter than you, I guess.
Yeah. Last night I messaged and I was like, "Oh, you want Star Wars or the Arrival?" And you were like, "I'll take Star Wars." I was like, "Oh crap!" So,
oh yeah, he wants to know who should write the plot, and it's like, well, I literally have seen it once, so probably Matt should write the plot synopsis.
Yeah, and that is the correct answer, and I have written it. And if it's a hot mess, I apologize in advance. So
I hope you've written the whole thing as one long palindrome.
Geez, I should have. It's too bad I did that in the 15 minutes leading up to this podcast, but here we go. Earth is visited by 12 large alien craft, which station themselves in various locations around the world. Of course, the U.S. government has constructed a military installation right next to one and calls on linguist Louise Banks and physicist Ian Donnelly to try and communicate with the aliens. After breaking multiple protocol rules, the two began to work out the aliens' language in a basic rubric for translation. But translation also means thinking differently. Beyond things like grammar and syntax, the large organisms, which seem somewhere between a squid and a tree, observe reality from a perspective in which past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. The Chinese military, meanwhile, has been playing games with their own visiting craft and are ready to go to war with them once they begin talking about using weapons. Things also start to sour at the Montana site as rogue soldiers plant a bomb, killing one of the aliens in that craft. Louise's contact with the aliens has also altered her perception. She remembers future events, some involving her not yet born daughter, who will also succumb to illness at age 12, and a future United Nations dinner where the world's nations seem to be getting along relatively fine. She goes a bit off the grid, has a final visit with a surviving alien, and makes an unsanctioned phone call to the Chinese general, repeating the last words that his dead wife said, which helps to diffuse the escalation with the aliens. It turns out that the weapon is words, and this language will help humanity grow. The ships peel off back into outer space. They are helping now because they will need humanity's help in 3,000 years' time. Okay, see, I just confused myself reading that. So
You did a great job there, though. That was awesome.
But yeah, there is a fair amount to peel around, your head with this one. Usually we just do a little talk about the actors, and when I started watching this again last night, actually 2 nights ago, if you want to be for reals, but I totally and utterly forgot that Jeremy Renner was in this. So,
well, having not seen the film, it was like, oh, it's the film with Amy Adams. And then the other day when we said to our colleague Demetria, oh, we're watching Arrival, and she goes, oh, the Jeremy Renner film? I don't think I would describe it as a Jeremy Renner film. He's in there, but
yeah, he's just kind of here, I definitely remember, this is, I guess, peak Amy Adams time. We had American Hustle. I saw the Muppet movie a lot. Excuse me, not the Muppet movie, The Muppets, which she stars in. So I do think this is one of the better kind of, I guess she's a linguist, but one of the better scientist depictions in a film.
She does genuinely come across like she's as smart as they're saying she is.
Yeah.
Which, as we discussed in Stargate, is not always the case in these things.
Right. But yeah, I feel like I haven't seen her in much recently. I don't know.
Obviously, she did like Man of Steel and Justice League, but then, yeah.
That's a while ago. I'm concerned she aged out because she's a really good actor. And I guess she's probably about my age or slightly younger. So
Then
yeah.
again, I haven't seen anything other than like Marvel films and Dune for the past 10 years. They're not making any films.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Tobey Maguire showing up in that last Spider-Man was like almost shocking because he hasn't done any like blockbusters recently. So
Yeah.
we all just saw him age like 10 years all of a sudden. So
I'm sure Amy Adams has been up to stuff. But yeah, she's great in this.
I guess that are we is that the actors? It's basically the Amy Adams show. I mean,
she was in The Woman in the Window. That was her last thing. It's a Netflix movie.
Okay.
Yes.
Since then, she's only been in like one other movie since 2016.
Maybe she's concentrating on other stuff.
Yeah, it's fine. I have that little fear, like, oh, here's an actress I really like that's possibly being aged out. There's been a few others where that happened. Who was it in the 90s? There's a giant actress in the 90s who just kind of vanished. And well, we just did a couple Andie MacDowell films. You don't see her much anymore. There's one example of someone who was in everything in the 90s and actually did go off to like focus on their own life and all that sort of stuff. But yeah.
There's obviously also Forrest Whitaker in there. Admittedly, he's just playing like the pretty typical, here's the army guy role.
Yeah.
But he does a good job with it. Like he comes across like he genuinely cares while still being the following orders man.
But not to jump past the actor gun too far, but I guess the main characters here besides the doctor are the big, non-anamorphic aliens.
Abbott and Costello there.
Abbott and Costello, yes. So I guess I let's jump a little straight to talking about them. As design, how did you feel? I ended up writing somewhere between a squid and a tree, of course. But
they reminded me a lot of the tripods from the TV show, well, the aliens from the TV show version of the tripods.
Okay, yeah.
A pretty obscure 80s British TV, so I'm not surprised you haven't seen it. That's brilliantly alien.
There was a scientific study that came out where 33 scientists had, and I researched this just to make sure I was right because I remembered something along these lines, that they believe that octopus, which it looks like a squid octopus, one of the theories is that it came from an asteroid off planet because of the ET DNA that doesn't seem to have a direct evolution of anything on the planet and has 30,000 more genomes than the human, way more complex than the human genome. So I am pretty positive because like I see that they put these like so much disclosure in these movies and like the list of all the things they said and even the small words. There was like a few times that they just dropped a word that was like a freaking bomb. That word right there just goes to show someone knew something. So they had like the octopus, right, and the arms like these beings coming from another planet, but then also kind of look arachnoid too, kind of like spiders. And obviously the ink coming out, of the tentacles.
I also liked that because you couldn't see the top of them. They're like in that mist. So the whole alien just looked like a hand.
Yeah.
Like it could have been just the hand of a much, much bigger creature, the way they were moving and appearing.
I definitely had like the suckers definitely had me feeling like not at ease. How she kind of just goes and touches hands on the glass or whatever with the sucker thing. I'm like, man, I don't have the cojones for that.
I don't know. I really like, just in a more general sense, the fact that they're not just humans in makeup. Like I want to see aliens when I see my aliens. So I really like that in this film. Like I love Star Trek, but 90% of the time when you see an alien in Star Trek, it's a dude with a slight
different humanoid.
Yeah, slight different deformity on the forehead or the ears or something.
They do, yeah. I guess they do explain that somewhere in Star Trek, but at the same time,
yeah. But that's just, that's a throwaway.
Yeah,
way to shut you up.
Like I definitely feel, despite my like, gee, I wish there was a little more color. I mean, it's a really cool design and feels very alien. Like you definitely get the impression. Real. Yeah, more than like a gray, because a gray still, you can wrap your head around that. And like you said, Luke, we never, except for even at the end when we do see the top, it's still kind of like hazy and weird. So
well, and we never see We never see like gears and gizmos and tubes in their technology. It's just this like, yeah, what's the thing from 2001?
It's very organic.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's just a big black monolith. We never see how any of it works. It just does.
I was sitting there thinking it's a sphere, what's ovoid, and I was like, it's like half of a seed, right? And I don't know if that was like, you know, something they probably were thinking about it because they designed it, right? It's like, you know, they're planting the seed because they're going to come back in 3,000 years. So I guess maybe that's kind of a visual cue.
Yeah.
You know, one of the interesting things is I remember when I went to see it, right? I left the theater and I feel like so many people just left scratching their heads, because the reason why I liked this movie was because it didn't have the negative alien, the evil alien thing, which is pretty much always the you know, there's some sort of climax in the movie, and it's normally that there's this bad guy that we're trying to conquer, right? In this movie, it might as well have been a documentary of First Contact, because there was no climax on that level. And I kid you not, man, we left the theater. I don't have a good, strong, long-term or short-term memory, but I remember these moments. We literally walked out of the theater and people were talking shit, and it was because they didn't realize what just occurred. It just ended. You know, there was no, even the only people that were kind of like negative could have been Russia and China, but that wasn't even played out enough for it to even be some sort of, you know, conflict. The only conflict that occurred with them wasn't even against the US. It was China saying that aliens are trying to divide us as humans. Okay, so it wasn't even like anything there. It was basically just like a matter of fact, as if we're peeking in to what this kind of experience would be. So to me, it was a great exploration of how it would look, how First Contact would look on the planet, rather than having all this Hollywood, you know, component added to it.
Yeah, it was. I did occur to me like several times watching it. So I was like, did this play in China? And if so, was it successful? Because it's
right.
They are shown as being the I guess the hot-headed nation in this movie, but in the end, the general, of course, you know, makes the right decision and shows up as very erudite at the end of the movie, right? The other one is, I know the Chinese government hates time travel stuff. They don't want that. In this movie, I'm like, does this count as time travel?
They might like this one because this movie was like, oh, history was fated to happen and this is how it had to happen.
Yeah.
And isn't their problem with time travel? They don't want to suggest that you could ever go back and edit the glorious works of Chairman Mao or whatever.
Yeah, I guess if you just know about everything, that's fine. Being omnipotent is fine, just not actually traveling through time.
Because you guys are aware about the whole China Hollywood connection, right? That basically Hollywood needs to make movies that China will accept.
Oh yeah, that's totally what I'm alluding to.
Yeah.
It did release in China, but it didn't do very well.
Oh, and if anyone's screaming at their phone right now, omnipotent is what I was going for. All knowledge, not all power.
Omniscient.
Oh, I got it wrong twice. Okay, you can punch me through the Zoom then. I ain't always good with them words, son. But,
there was one scene, because I was watching it on Amazon Prime, which had English voices but Japanese subtitles. There was a bit at the end where she's talking to the alien. Did you have English subtitles for what it was writing?
I didn't. Oh, wait. Yes, I did. It was they were burned into the screen, I thought.
Yeah, but I only had the Japanese subtitles.
Oh, I mean, I thought they were like part of the film, but sorry, I didn't write it down though. So.
I mean, I could follow what was happening, but yeah, I sort of realized, like, oh, I think I meant to be able to read this. Like,
I think maybe that's where they say they're coming back in 3,000 years. I don't.
Yeah. Because I didn't.
There was the actual subtitle from the. She was getting. I think she was getting a telepathic download.
Yeah.
In that moment, because she understood it, and it was just showing us on the screen. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. One thing that you didn't mention in your plot synopsis, Matt, but which was a great part of this film. So obviously, yeah, she has the daughter who she hasn't had yet, but you spend like the first 2/3 of the film thinking that's a flashback.
Yeah.
Right.
And then eventually you realize, oh, she's actually flashing forwards. I thought that was done very well.
Well, I mean, I hope it's not cheating. Of course, I think both of us glance at the wiki a bit when we write these summaries, right? So when I went to the wiki, the first line was, sorry, I got to scroll up just a bit, but I think the reason that I did it the way I did it was the first line is linguist Louise Banks' daughter Hannah dies at the age of 12 from an incurable illness, and then blah, 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 aliens. So I was like, I can't start my summary that way. So, and I was like, well, it's future events anyway. So I guess I will just sit on it till it's time to mention it.
Yeah. But like, it's one of those great moments where once you figure it out, you realized how many clues it had given you.
Yeah.
Like talking about the dad, and you realize, oh, right, that was Jeremy Renner all along. And
yeah.
So on and so forth.
But I mean, honestly, yes, color me stupid, but that it didn't. I did have to, like, the first time I saw it, I was like, huh, it didn't quite track, you know. I mean, I was also watching it late at night with a drink in hand, so I mean, there is that going on as well. But yeah, once you get your head around it, of course, it is cool. So that's why I was curious if I was like, should I have told you to watch it twice? But I mean, even if you do, you'll certainly catch on to more of those hints and stuff. So
yeah, it's definitely a film I will watch again at some point.
Something that I kept thinking about during this, in part because we're planning to do this film later this year for the Vonnegut would-be 100th birthday, is Slaughterhouse 5. Where Billy Pilgrim, the main character, has also been given a gift/curse from aliens, and he exists at all points of his life randomly.
Right.
Know? So she's having the memories. She is, I guess, living physically. She's living her linear life, right? But mentally, she's jumping into the future. It doesn't seem she's having so many actual memories, but Billy Pilgrim will have this Zoom conversation, walk through the door, and then be in like a war 20 years ago, and walk, a bomb will blow up near him, and then suddenly he's like in the alien zoo where he spent a few years. So it's pretty wild stuff. But but that came to mind.
Part where they said Luis sees into the future. That was when the words were at the bottom, and she was having telepathic connection. They said Luis sees into the future. And at that point, I didn't realize that her daughter was like, gonna come later. So I thought that it was that her daughter's name as well. Maybe they're talking about the daughter seeing the future, but they were talking about how she's been seeing the future unfold all this time.
No, I tracked the daughter's Hannah because my daughter's name's Hannah. So
oh yeah, well, because your daughter's name is Hannah, I wasn't until they actually talked about it that I realized the whole her name is a palindrome thing, because I was mentally spelling it the Japanese way.
That's how my daughter's name is spelled. So yeah, it didn't catch to me either, did it? Because actually, this is weird. I just talk about language. When my daughter was born, my wife and I were deciding what her name was going to be. She said she said Hannah. I heard Hannah, like in this movie, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't like that name, but then she's like, no, it's Hana, like Japanese. I was like, oh yeah, sure. It's just weird. Like, as the Western version, I was like, no, I don't like that name. But then as the Japanese version, I was like, yeah, it's fine. So
I'd always assumed that you'd gone with that name because it's like one of the few names that exists in both.
That was part of the thought, yes.
Okay.
So did you guys catch at all the part where Dr. Ian came in, when he first came in, with Luis, and started asking questions about how it's communicating? And he said, were there any shapes? And then he said, just really quick, are they communicating in Fibonacci? Did you guys hear that part?
Yeah, I caught that.
I don't know if I caught it, but it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's pretty much like the premise of how matter is created, how sacred geometry, even mitosis, how things are built, right? Even our galaxy has a Fibonacci spiral. So, it was just like these little things here and there that they kind of dropped that really have so much more meaning than just that little moment that they spent on it.
Yeah, what I did catch is they're like, obviously they're like, we need to try math because that's universal language. And then they're like, they don't understand algebra. So it's like, I guess the Fibonacci is like more basic, so you can work with that. Whereas algebra has too many constructs because we have to create our own symbols to do algebra. So
they made them seem so like advanced and so primitive at the same time, like so childlike and dumb, like they didn't get certain things, that they had to start like it was a baby. So it was kind of like a contradiction, because these beings were like beyond anything that we can even fathom, but at the same time we had to figure out how to communicate with them, instead of them having the awareness of how to communicate with us.
Yeah, I guess, and Luke, you can go either way on this, but I felt like as an English teacher, this film becomes slightly more stressful when they're trying to work out, okay, we got the basic words, because, you know, that's what we have to do with very small children. Like, we have to communicate with those. I mean, we'll try and get them to say sentences and things, but when we really need to get the point across, it's like use one. We don't want to use the Japanese word, even if we know it, right? So we'll just like spout out this like caveman English if we really need a kid to understand something.
Yeah, but it made it much more interesting because, like, if you remove all the sci-fi element, the interesting point that this film is making is the way thinking in a different language does change the way you think.
Yeah, I like that part.
And that's something that you notice because some of the students I teach, the ones who are really good at English at this point, when they're talking to me in English, they turn into these sassy, funny, like they could be an American teenager. But then when they tell you about their school life and they're so shy and sensible and Japanese, it is like two different people. And like my Japanese is not at a very high level, but like my sense of humor does change when I'm trying to communicate in Japanese, and my level of politeness and just my attitude to things is very different when I'm using Japanese. For people I know who are like much more bilingual than I am, that is something they talk about. Like, you're a different person in each of your languages.
Yeah, my wife knows, and this isn't even necessarily a personality thing. Although she has noticed, she feels like she can be a little more direct in English, right? But she was noticing that her voice is like does a different each language in like a different tone. Like she speaks in a higher tone in English and a deeper tone in Japanese. So she's a husky voiced Japanese speaking lady, but a kind of a higher pitched English speaking lady.
See, I've mostly encountered people who do it the other way around. Like we had a colleague who sounded like a normal human being in English, and then she turned into this like almost irritating high pitched anime girl when she talked in Japanese.
She'd do that yeah, my wife would do that on the phone because we were in the car and she was having to make some business calls and I'm like, what's going on? But yeah, it is interesting. So the aliens kind of use these like Zen circles to, you know, communicate. You know, of course, that's a big thing in Japan where you use the Zen painting, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was what's that Japanese ancient tradition, Shinto or something?
Yeah,
that's right.
That has that symbol kind of, right, with the snakes eating the tail too.
Shinto doesn't really have symbols, but yeah, the Ouroboros snake is common everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's all like kind of tied together in Japan, right? It's not like there's Buddhism and there's Shinto and there's Zen Buddhism.
Yeah, like the name Shinto was only created like fairly recently because it's just a big collection of local like traditions. It's not really like an organized belief system.
So the circle itself is, I guess, more of a Zen Buddhism tradition, but those Zen Buddhist monks probably had a few toes in Shinto for sure. Like here's kind of interesting where, you know, it's you know, the mountain has its own god, right? So I mean, I guess that's sort of like how Hinduism works, if I'm not wrong, but just, you know, when you build a shrine, you're acknowledging like the god of that particular spot, more or less, because everything's a god, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, sorry. Back to the Zen circles. So I definitely found interesting when they learned how to map them. Like they were like mapping points for meaning and stuff, and I guess she had learned to read the squiggles like relatively quickly. I mean, they do say that what they do, it's like 1 or 2 months that they're actually working with these aliens, right? It's not like they just
she's at it full time for quite a while.
Yeah.
So but what happened was that when she got taken and had that telepathic connection in dream state, but then she was actually there because she didn't go into that spacecraft. She was like all of a sudden there, and then she had this experience where she was behind the glass with them and they started speaking to her. She had telepathy that unlocked in her brain how to know their whole language. She could read it without having to translate it.
I kind of read it as the other way around, that by learning so much of their language, then she was able to have the telepathic connection.
I felt she had a trip on, maybe the telepathic connection. Yeah, that's something different. I'm saying that when she was at the telepathic connection, because she tripped out when she opened that book and she was like, oh my God, like I could read this.
Yeah.
So it just seemed like she was surprised by the fact that she understood everything.
But I think what it was saying was learning their language is what lets your mind do that.
Yeah.
So I guess she'd learned just enough that she could then connect to them and learn the rest.
Yeah.
And I was also wondering if there's, like, again, we're saying reading. She opened the book and she could read it, but these are like emissions from the aliens. I wonder if there's a certain, and they have to bring her into the space. So I wonder if there's a part of this language where you actually really do just feel it, like we talk about human communication, a very large portion of it is nonverbal. So by having the glass in the way, I mean, they want to touch like from the get-go, right? As soon as they get out of the radiation suits, they really want to make physical contact, maybe because that language involves physical contact as well.
Yeah.
Right. What do you guys make of, like, how in the beginning they went in, the first time they went in, and then all of a sudden it cuts them coming out, and then she was like, am I fired? The way I took it was that something happened, that the frequency was too intense, because you know how they said the other people couldn't handle it, or some people couldn't handle it, and that something happened where the beam came and they just got overloaded and they had to try again. But they really don't tell us what happened there. What do you guys feel went down?
So they say there's no emissions. They can't tell if these things are communicating with each other. There's no radiation or power. My thought, and this is just me thinking about, is there was some kind of, like, we'll call it radiation. I know they said the ships didn't have radiation, but a different kind of radiation that we simply, we just have nothing to measure it with, and it was very intense in that space.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I landed.
I feel so too, like a freak. I mean, I don't know if you like. I mean, I researched different UFO government documents and people that have contact with ETs and stuff, and I've heard stories about frequencies of these craft that people sometimes their bodies can't basically take the vibration of whatever's there, right? And especially if there's super powerful beings that maybe exist in other dimensions, and we're third dimensional beings. So I kind of took it as maybe exactly what you're saying. There's some sort of energy emanating from it that the human couldn't take, right? And I just want to say this, like, it was, to me, one thing was very interesting was the fact that they had, there was no radiation, no emissions coming from it. And just recently, Elon Musk said that if ETs have visited the planet, that we would have picked it up with our sensors. But to me, that's kind of like thinking that our sensors and the way that we can basically quantify things are the most advanced that we can, that any being that comes to this planet will be utilizing something within our wheelhouse of being able to perceive this, whatever is coming off it. So, which completely doesn't mean that we're not being visited by ET. It just means that we don't have the technology to really sense what's going on with that. And it's kind of the same thing that happened in this movie.
You're telling me Elon Musk thinks he knows everything? Surely not.
I know, right?
Actually, here's a thought. At the end, when I said they peel off into space, are we sure they're going into space?
Or well, because it had that effect where like all the mist was coming off of them.
Yeah, they just
and it kind of looked like they just evaporated.
Yeah.
Well, they probably went through like a portal or something. I would think back to their time, because they're not really from space. They're from another time in space.
From the space between spaces.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like, I of course I love the idea of we hop on the Enterprise, go to warp speed and find aliens, but like more realistically, I'm like, UFO alien encounters for me would be like, well, some of it would be like weird military stuff, and some of it may be interdimensional, not necessarily interstellar,
Yeah.
Yeah. Straight up, man. The whole military thing too, like that is pretty interesting, because I feel they did it really close to how I would think it would actually happen on Earth if this occurred, and everything was basically fear-based about the military trying to figure out what's going on. And I don't know if you guys are following, the UFO disclosures from the military in the last 7 years, but before 7 years ago, it was all like grassroots movement to disclose ETs. And then all of a sudden, the NASA, the CIA, and a bunch of other people came out with the fact that UFOs are real. And now the whole entire movement has been taken over by the Pentagon and the DOD. And it's literally because they are seeing craft and they're wondering, are there foreign adversaries? Or if they're not foreign adversaries, whatever these craft are, do they have some malintent, right? So they kind of played on that in this whole story. And actually, interesting enough, 2016, 2017, is when the first drops of the UFO disclosure occurred from the military, which was the same time this movie came out.
Well, I liked there was the little CIA guy in the room all the time, and he would just jump in with like these absolute assumptions based on nothing of what their terrible intentions could be. Like, you know, they would say something innocuous and he'd be like, oh, they're trying to divide us up and conquer us. And then she's like, what did they say that made you think that?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how these, when you get to that kind of position in a group like the CIA, it's because you think like that all the time.
I mean, in this case, the Chinese at least did like take what they were told and ran with that. They didn't quite understand what they were told, but which is why they were getting their missiles ready.
It was a misunderstanding.
Exactly.
You know?
Well, yeah, because human language does use so much of like the words weapon, war, attack. So if those are the words you teach them, then yeah, that's how they're going to reply. And
like they said, we're playing aggressive games with them, so of course they're going to use that language. Like, you know, if well, Luke and I, we've played Mario Kart, and it's not too long before we start screaming obscenities at each other, you know. So that's just what happens when you start playing a competitive game. But then it's, you know, it's so high stakes, I guess, when you're also making first contact, which is
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the CIA guy even said, like, how can this be used against us? Like when they were coming out with, when they said something, or I think the ETs basically presented some sort of pattern, and the first thing they jumped to was like, what is this about, and what are they going to do to use it against humanity? So lots of fear-based stuff in there.
I want to jump back. You mentioned the vibrations a few minutes ago, and and at the end, when she's in the mist space, it isn't. Yeah, it's not 100% clear if that's a physical thing or a construct. I guess the point being, like, I'm thinking, like, you know, when people are getting into trying to do astral projection or lucid dreaming, there's sort of that stage when you start vibrating like mad, and that's basically where it's either you're going to abort or start having a lucid dream or something, right? And I just wonder if the space that the aliens live in is like that, and they're just manifesting physically just for this encounter.
That's definitely a possibility, because they leave that up to us to speculate upon.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm like, saw the glass with that, I kind of thought it was like an interdimensional realm.
Yeah, it's like I'm getting 8 times trippy with that, but hey, made Dune after this, so.
Well, and then again, that would, like I said, they appear like they're just a hand, because if this is not their body, this is just them making an excursion into our realm, then it would come across like just a hand pushing in from whatever other place they occupy.
Yeah, it's like if you want to, you know, trap a flatlander, all you have to do is it Flatland, where all you have to do is put them in a square because they can't get out of the square. You know, and that's where we're living. The aliens, or the other beings, living in a more multi-dimensional space, possibly.
Yeah,
I definitely got, design-wise, a lot of like Lovecraft, Cthulhu vibes off them. But then just for once, they had good intentions, not unfathomable, terrible intentions.
Yeah. That's why I liked it.
Oh yeah. See, it never even occurred to me to call them monsters, right? Because we spent the whole movie trying to communicate with them. But yeah, this does rank on your monster movie scale, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
But yeah, you just don't. I mean, behind you have all these similar creatures that are, you know, from the Godzilla movies that are destroying cities. So. Yep. I mean, you could have these aliens, like size them about 3 times and put them next to Godzilla, and you'd have that going on. That's just not where this movie is going. So, which is cool.
They protect us from Godzilla, because they need us to stay alive for 3,000 years.
Right, you know? Right. Well, Godzilla's a protector, isn't he? Now, sometimes.
Which one are you watching?
Sometimes Godzilla's the protector. Gamera is the one that's always in our corner, right?
Yeah, he loves children.
Yes. So we're taking it from the multi-dimensional aspect. I guess let's look a little more into the space aspect. Again, they could have come through a portal, and Neil, that's in your wheelhouse. Do you want to give us your interstellar sort of view? Yeah.
All right. So I'll just say this, right? Because when I started getting into the whole question of extraterrestrials and if they exist in 2000, 2001, for me, from the beginning, it was always the interdimensional phenomena. And then over the last 5 or 6 years, I've had a lot of conversations with, whistleblowers, UFO disclosure activists, whatever, like people into this stuff, where when I say extraterrestrial, they go, oh, wait. Oh, it's not extraterrestrial, it's interdimensional. And I'm like, there's no real difference to me. So because a lot of these beings, even if they're extraterrestrial and they come from thousands of light years away, they're still going interdimensionally to get to our planet. Because obviously, if you're going at the speed of light, it's going to take so long to get here. You're going to need to go in a stasis chamber or do some sort of thing. So a lot of the beings that we were speaking about, back when I first woke up to this, fifth dimensional Arcturians, beings from Sirius living in the sixth dimension, these beings were other dimensional beings that use some sort of portal in order to get to Earth. So again, to me, the whole question of extraterrestrial, interdimensional are one and the same. I highly doubt that I think everything under the sun probably could exist, but the fact that we're so far away from different planets and the only way for them to get here is to have some sort of portal technology or some sort of like force field that can go through a wormhole. So when this whole thing occurred here, with Arrival, immediately I had that whole entire realm where the smoke, it looks so interdimensional. And then as soon as they said that they come from another time, that definitely goes in alignment with that as well. A lot of people believe that these beings that are visiting us are actually us in the future, or us in the future on other planets after we've left the Earth and incarnated on other planets. And that ties into the whole question of time. Because when you exist in the third, fourth dimension, you have 2 dimensions of space and 2 dimensions of time. You have linearity, a beginning and an end. When you go higher in dimensions, you add more points of time until you get singular time, until you get to the 13th dimension, which is the void, which is the singularity, the black hole, where time no longer exists. So as we move forward in time, we move out of linearity and we go into secular time, which is so interesting because they use the circle and they were talking about how that unlocks time. And then when we transcend secular time, there is no beginning, middle, and end. There is no future. Everything is happening simultaneously. So those are just some of the thoughts that I got from watching this.
Then there's the bit where the aliens say there is no time, and the Russians misinterpret it as, "Oh, you're out of time. We're going to get you," but they're just trying to explain to you, "No, there is no time."
Yeah. Well, dude, check this. Well, that's interesting because the whole Maya prophecy that the end of the world was actually the end of time.
Right.
And people translated it to the end of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's part of the thing of getting older, but I don't get too many future premonitions. I don't want them, right? But I can find myself easily, almost placing my consciousness into past points in time. I was just talking with another guest about doing the movie Contact, and she was like, "Oh, yeah, it's the 25-year anniversary." I'm like, whoa, I'm in the theater right now on opening night of that movie. It's just one of those moments that sears in your brain, and you can I don't even know why. There wasn't any particular reason for it. It's just like that moment seared in my brain, and I can always be there. The first year I was in Japan, I was about to go back home. I'm on my bicycle, and that's where I had the realization, gee, I think I want to hang out here some more. But that moment is, seared in my mind, right? And I can kind of revisit it. I mean, right now,
Yeah, that's another positive ET movie, right? The only real enemy was ourselves.
Oh yeah, well, just like this, it's people who just decide to bomb the stuff and burn it clean, right? But if no creepy Jake Busey in this one though. Thank God.
they tried. They did have that kind of creepy guy who's scared of the aliens. I like
he was no
plot device McGee. He had no character other than I'm here because I'm going to do something bad at the end.
But it's like how the first shot of him, there's like a little bit of that side eye, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's a movie. That's Hollywood. It's like you can't get into the guy's deep motivations because, well, he's not that. He's just there to blow something up, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, there was one other thing. Did you guys notice the use of the number 12?
I caught it like once. Was it a recurring thing?
Yeah, it was a recurring thing because as soon as I heard it the first time, I started listening to it because of the significance of 12 within the one, the number 13. So you have the 12 apostles, you have the one, you have the 12 tribes of Israel. So they said there was 12 ships, right? And then a few other times it dropped the number 12 But even the Pentecostals that burnt their church down and all killed themselves, they were talking about 12 sets of 12. And then right when it was saying the last word, it trailed out so we couldn't hear it. So it was just interesting that they were using that number as well. And within spiritual communities, you know, even within the Maya calendar, many ancient texts, there's 12 sets or 12 like different realities. And then usually the 12 all existed within one circle, which equals 13.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at my
cool.
my Kindle here, which it's a book I haven't quite finished. 53%. Let the numbers guide you, which I think is one book that kind of breaks down that idea. And I'm looking at the chapters to see what. Oh no, the chapters are just number 1, number 2, number 3, so I can't get the shorthand. Too bad. I do know, you know, 1's the monad, 2's the duality, 3 is the rectifying, you know, and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, that the book I was reading, I think, also makes the whole thing on with 12.
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to ask because you brought up 13, you know, the 13th apostles, the one you maybe have to watch out for, right? So
yeah.
is that just like what, the unnatural number or something? Because 12 is complete and 13 you said the void.
Yeah, so that also goes into dimensions. Nassim Haramein has a good like 7-hour video on this where he talks about the number 13. I have a presentation where I have like 13 how it's been used, but it's in my presentation. I don't even remember. But basically, there's so many different dimensions. There's parallel dimensions. There's infinite amount of dimensions. But if you think about dimensionality within our physical universe, this is not only esoteric wisdom, but also accepted by string theory and quantum physics within the last 10 years, is that there are basically 12 dimensions of this physical universe of our galaxy existing within this physical universe. And then there's a 13th dimension, which is the center of the void in the black hole in the Milky Way galaxy. So the whole understanding of the 12 apostles and Jesus being the 13th is a representation of the black hole because the singularity was God. And another example is the Mayans. Mayans also use the 13. The 12 within the 1 equals the 13. So the 12 dimensional realities within the one black hole. And they even have a name for it. They call it the central sun, right? And we hear this through so many ancient cultures, the central sun. And the central sun, I even have this is the symbol, right, that they use for the central sun. It's not actually the sun in the center of our solar system. The central sun is the black sun, which is another term used, which is the Milky Way, the supermassive black hole in the center of the galaxy. So what, you know, Nassim Haramein, who's a physicist, and many others speculate upon is that the number 13 has always been a representation of how our karmic matrix cycle of this galaxy is, and that we're able to ascend to 12 dimensions before we get recycled into the 13th dimension and start the process again. But when we go into the 13th dimension, we have a choice to incarnate into another galaxy, another universe, or to go and basically go part of this reality again. And within that, you have 7 dimensions. The first 7 dimensions, now we have the 7 dimensions of Mormonism. We have the seven layers of heaven. You know, 7 is like a number utilized so many places. Pythagoras' number, he thought 7 was the divine number. 7 dimensions, your physical body still exists. You're still a physical person. Like we exist, we live on Earth, we're walking around. 8th dimension, the planet still exists, but you become pure energy. And then you continue to go up and up and up until you go to the 13th dimension. And then, then you become the God consciousness. Then you know everything because you're tapped into the void of singularity. So when they said the 12 right there, that's where my mind kind of went.
So I guess we could which dimension should we assume we're at? The 4th? Because we're moving through what we perceive as time?
I think we're at the 4th because, okay, so basically the way it works is there's 3 dimensions, length, width, and height, right? Length, width, height. And then the 4th dimension is the location within the 3, the lodging of it all. So the time and space exists from the 4th dimension. There's 3 dimensions, length, width, and height, but we don't exist within those dimensions unless we live in the 4th one, which is the time and space. So a location within those 3. Some people think that the 4th dimension is the astral realm and it's the portal to another reality. But mainstream science, I kind of believe that there, a lot of people that have speculated within the mainstream are onto the right path, that the 4th dimension is actually where we are right now. And then the 5th dimension is where we have the opportunity to go to. And that's just another vibrational frequency.
Yeah, because I mean, we think of time like as a ticking clock for obvious reasons, but it's more like time is change. If nothing changed, there'd be no time, which is again a void, I guess. Um, what numbers do you encounter in your life now that we've gotten knee deep in the numerology? I'm just going to throw out, for some reason, I always come across the number 268. So when my students ask me the somewhat inane question, what's your favorite number, I can always just blast that out at them. So that's kind of fun.
That's you say your favorite number is 268?
No, it's the number I keep running across in my life. So I decided that's my number.
I see 47 a lot.
Oh yeah, that's the Star Trek number. Yeah, I was watching Voyager last night where they're like, there's 47 gel packs on the ship. I was messaging my dad to start a Zoom a few days ago, and I was like, we only have a little bit of time. We have 87 things to do, and he said he was actually typing the number 87 to me at that moment. So that was pretty weird. So, Luke, you got a number? What's
69.
That is an answer. It's that or 420 blazing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so any other big points we wanted to throw out on this one?
Not real. I mean, to go completely the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, go for it.
I can see how after this film he got the gig to make Dune.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it's such a different kind of spaceship to what you're used to seeing from your Star Wars and your Star Trek. And then, yeah, when we finally got Dune, he made all the technology seem like this incredibly ancient. Even the people who made it have forgotten how they made it, like monolithic stuff. And it was such a perfect fit for that story.
And he made the Blade Runner, which I haven't seen. In between, was it?
Oh yeah, I always forget he made that one.
Yeah. That's his other. Well, I don't think did. You watch that?
I watched it theater, but I haven't seen it since.
Okay, I haven't seen it at all yet, so we have to watch the first one. But yeah, that like I feel like seeing Dune. I guess he's an innovative enough filmmaker. There's a little bit of a disconnect with just the new stuff he's doing. So Dune, I'd read the book, I'd seen the Lynch version. That was kind of good for me. I mean, to be like a key into his cinematic world. So now watching this one, I could appreciate it more this time. And
he does make very sort of urban, sepia-toned movies. So I can see why you're disappointed you don't get those trippy colors. But I think if you would just accept that's the sort of color palette you're getting, he probably is the best in business at doing it.
Yeah, that was the table I came on watching it this time. So
yeah, like when I go to a Villeneuve movie, I know I'm getting that sort of color palette, but it's going to look gorgeous in its own way.
Yeah, I've already mispronounced enough words. I was going to let you say his name first, which you did. So
it's like wiping your ass with silk.
Ooh. It's wonderful and horrible at the same time. So this is now a 6-year-old movie. It's had some part of holding up or not holding up. How much is this in the conversation? I mean, I guess we've kind of been mumbling this movie for the past 2 years without really thinking about it too hard.
I think it is the movie that, like, if you say I'm into sci-fi, people will be like, "Oh, have you seen Arrival?" I think it's got the reputation as like, this is the recent clever film. I don't know how much of like a big cultural impact it had.
Other than
I feel that, the cultural impact in the mainstream, not so much. I don't think people knew what to do with it. It was just like a movie that, just another movie. However, within the spiritual, there is no real community, but this fractalized spiritual community that does exist, that people are into and to be more clear about what that means, non-dogmatic, non-organized religion, spiritual people, and people into UFOs and ETs, they all, like, if you say, have you seen Arrival? They'll be like, yes, and they will probably have a comment on how it's so great because it was, painting extraterrestrials in a positive light rather than showing the regular evil alien. So I've had many conversations with people that I work with when we're just hanging out and we would talk about Arrival, and it would always go down that route of how like it gave us hope that, and at that moment when it came out, it actually gave us collectively hope that I was even on a podcast back then when it came out, how it gave us hope that Hollywood is transitioning from showing us evil aliens to something more positive, but it was just kind of a blip in the Matrix, that they just did it for one moment and didn't really continue with it, because it doesn't really, I don't feel like if there's no like conflict like that, it doesn't sell as good as like things where there's like somebody to conquer, like someone to be victorious over.
Well, they're saying that I can't think of many evil aliens we've had since this film came out either.
Yeah, what's a alien sci-fi movie that came out since then?
We had that terrible Independence Day sequel.
Wasn't that the same year as this?
I think so, yeah. Again, his other movies with
Yeah,
well,
but neither of his other movies have aliens in.
Yeah, well, Dune, they're all aliens.
No, but Dune, they're all human.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And we had a couple of years where there was just shit coming out, like freaking during COVID, there was like nothing really good coming out.
Yeah, a movie every 3 months. Although we did have Tenet, which also obviously hits the palindrome button that this movie did. So and the whole, I mean, they do the time thing differently. They, in Christopher Nolan's mind, time is the most linear thing possible. He's just gonna play with it.
Yeah. Like the character still experiences time completely linearly. He just happens to be traveling back and forth through it.
Right. So,
but then in a lot of his other films, time is all over the place.
Well, Inception's got the the dream layer, so that's a little different.
But even you go to something like Prestige and Batman Begins, the film cuts back and forth.
Oh, right. Okay. It's a non-linear story.
You experience the film non-linearly.
I guess I'm saying this movie is basically like time breaks down, right?
Yeah.
Which is spiritually cool, where Christopher Nolan is a lot more nuts and bolts. Like he'll do very inventive things with it, but it's still nuts and bolts. But
even Interstellar, love transcends time.
And yeah, that's why people, I mean, you love that movie. I love that movie, but a lot of people don't love that movie for that reason. They wanted the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
I was mentioned before we were recording about just some of the television sci-fi certainly has some interesting takes on the aliens. The newer Treks, of course, where you mentioned Discovery when it came on the last season. Discovery is meeting the 10cc, has a similar sequence to this movie where they're trying to learn how to communicate with these things. So I would say that the last season of Discovery is definitely kind of a, they'd watched Arrival at least once or twice.
Well, I feel like this movie had seen the Darmok at Jalad episode of Star Trek.
That's in my notes somewhere, yes.
Yeah. Just how do you communicate when you're coming from like such a different position?
I'm sitting here to see if I had just written the notes straight out or if I did something witty.
Star Trek Discovery, there's that anomaly that's screwing everything up, but these beings didn't even know they were doing it. Is that correct? And then they're trying to find
they're sorry, Luke, we're spoiling you, but you don't care that much. But yeah, they're trying to mine a certain element from the they live outside the galaxy. They're trying to mine inside the galaxy. And it's, it's like us mining. Like we don't really think about all the bugs living in the ground. So when they do this, they're just destroying worlds because they don't understand that these are like sentient planets and things. So we have to go talk to them a bit and tell them that. And what at first, like, oh, we'll just make sure we're doing like depopulated areas. And then at the end, it's sort of like, no, you just have to stop doing this. You have to find another way because I
haven't watched that part yet, bro.
Oh, sorry, I'm spoiling everybody here. Okay, it's been out for 6 months. but it does pertain to this movie. So I would actually say Discovery is not my favorite Star Trek, but yeah, that last season really does kind of take the thread from Arrival. So if that's a way, I guess it holds up pretty well. That at least the television sci-fi, the Orville is doing a bit of that too. So
cool.
I love the Orville.
But yeah, generally this kind of more thoughtful sci-fi has been on TV, right? And the movies, it's like you have to have a big action set piece and whatever, blah blah blah. Even Star Trek, right? The motion picture tried to do this kind of storytelling didn't sell. So it's like, okay, Wrath of Khan.
Yeah. So I guess these movies make it through the big budget Hollywood cracks every once in a while, and we're all the better for it. So occasionally you get your Close Encounters, you get this. I mean, hey, we got this in Interstellar within like a year of each other. That's pretty hip. Maybe 2 years. Aha. Okay. I guess we'll wind this one down then. So yeah, good movie. You should watch it. Think about it. It's one to think about.
If you haven't watched it and you just listened to this podcast, we spoiled everything. But I think it's still worth seeing.
Discovery. Neil, can you tell everyone a bit about your website and how to find your stuff?
Yeah, for sure. You can check me out at portal2ascension.org. If you sign up there on our website, you get a username and password emailed to you. There's thousands of hours of presentations, a lot of information on UFOs, extraterrestrials. But one of the main things, well, ET's UFOs definitely big, but a lot of ancient history information and redefining the timeline, because, you know, history has been written and rewritten by the victors so many times. We're so away from the original truth. So we work with many researchers, archaeologists, and beyond that are reconstructing humanity's history and redating ancient structures. So you'll have that there, but the whole entire component of everything we do is spiritually oriented, even the whole understanding of ancient civilizations and their awareness of consciousness, right? So you can check that out, portal2ascension.org. And the other place is YouTube, youtube.com/portal2ascension. We go live every single day with some sort of presentation there, so you can subscribe and get notifications on all the information that we're putting out there.
Okay, Luke, do the thing.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, it's on Twitter at MLSFS Pod. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that. Just search Matt and Luke Sci-Fi Sanctuary. If you've enjoyed it, you want to help keep it online, you can go to patreon.com/podcastio, where you can throw us $1 a month to keep it online. And from there, you can find links to the other podcasts that me and Matt create, like Matt's podcast about the Twilight Zone, Time Enough Podcast, his podcast about weird experimental educational movies, Oral Hygiene. You can find my video gaming podcasts like Luke Loves Pokemon, Monster Mash, and the Game Show.
That's our life. Wake up in the morning, do a podcast, go to work.
Yeah, we're close to having like one coming out every day of the week. So
yeah, I got to be productive. So yeah, how do we end this one? What I want to do is like squirt black ink at my camera, but actually no, I don't want to do that. Hello, welcome.
Arrived they 2016 year the in.
All right. Okay. That should be the cutting spot then, I guess.
Yep.
I'm telling myself because I edit these, of course. So it's what I'm like. It seems like on the nose when I say that, but then when I'm actually editing, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I said that. Okay. Have a groovy one then out in where are you in Mexico again?
Puerto Vallarta.
Oh. No, I don't. I can't place that one, but it looks fantastic. So, yeah, this one will be coming out. Just to I'll send you the link when that happens. But it's going to be July 12th. So that'll be when this one goes up.
I had no idea there was a new Orville out. You've like opened my eyes to the new Star Trek and the new Orville, so I got a lot of stuff to watch now.
Yeah. Especially in your wheelhouse. Both, obviously neither are perfect, but they're both pretty good.
I love Discovery and Orville. I was watching them both at the same exact time, just going back and forth on each one.
The new season of Orville, I'd say it's flawed. They got maybe like a little too much leeway on this one because they're on Hulu. They can extend the show to a little over an hour an episode now. But maybe they didn't need to. kind of like the fourth season of Twilight Zone, where they shouldn't have made it longer. But anyway, it still has all the same quality of sci-fi ideas and a lot of good stuff. So they maybe just need a little better editing for this season. So
yeah, I mean, it's freaking great how they made comedy and reality. It's like it's funny, but at the same time, it seems pretty real.
I would say season 3, the comedy is even more muted now. I mean, they still have a joke in here, but it's they're no longer really trying to be much of a comedy.
The gay Klingon and all that shit, it's freaking hilarious, man.
Oh, right. But yeah. So there's now it's actually more like Trek now, where there's just like a little aside, and it's funny, but then the show itself is getting more Trekky. So yeah,
It became more serious.
yeah. Although Luke, I guess it's gonna be a real long time before you get to that one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit
Well, thanks so much for having me, guys.